First off, top end. Basically, the first things you want to do when doing a top end, clean cylinders. You want them nice and clean. The way I clean them, soap and water. Flush them really good, blow them off with air, and then oil the cylinder, obviously, because it'll rust. Next thing, fitment of the rings. Very important, the end gaps. The gap of the ring, if it's too tight, the ring's going to be butted and it's not going to expand where it needs to be. If it's too loose, it's going to crush too much. Basically, the way for checking that is just take the ring. Square it up. Just make sure it's nice and even in there. The other gauge. Just check the gap. On a stock ring, it is 7 to 20 thou gap. If the gap's too big, there's nothing you can do except throw it away and put a new ring in it. If it's too small, they actually make a file that you can file the end of the ring and actually make the gap bigger. Now, on this motor, with the 113 and the high compression pistons, they're actually a different compound ring. They're actually made out of a different material. And what they give you for a spec for the end gap is 4 thou for every inch of bore. So this is 4 by 0.060. So you're looking for somewhere around 17 thou or so for end gap.
Because of the different material they're using that
Yeah.
for expansion on that, more of the expand.
They're actually it's a harder ring. They're made out of a different material. I'm not exactly sure what exactly they're made out of.
Oh.
So these are
Oh, is it the ring material that's different?
It's
Or
the actual
just the
ring material. Well, the piston material is different too.
So you just have to go by the book. There's nothing.
Yeah, you have to go by the directions for the piston that you're using. If you're using stock, obviously go by the stock. If you're using Screaming Eagle, go by the whatever the directions say that come with the pistons. And then our rings, installing them onto the piston. For stock rings, the top ring doesn't have a mark on it. It can basically go either direction. It tells you if it's bevel, the bevel faces up on a top ring. The second ring, if it's bevel, the bevel faces down. The second ring's pretty much always got a mark on it and which direction it goes. The top ring really doesn't matter. These rings, it does matter. These actually have a mark on the top of the ring. Top and second ring both have a mark on them. Very, very important that they go the right direction. If not, pretty much you'll be pumping oil up to the spark plug. Not a good thing.
Basically, you fire it up, and it's basically your bike's now a smoke machine. Chances are your ring upside down.
Not good.
Not good. I mean, it's normal to puff a little bit at first just because you're oiling the cylinder and oiling the rings. It should clear up right away. Wrist pin, just a little bit of assembly glue. Now these pistons are marked front and rear, and they're marked front and rear on the bike, and they're marked for direction on which way they go. There's a little arrow that points towards the front of the bike.
So now, the jugs and the pistons you're using, are those all Screaming Eagle parts?
Yep.
So do you find you have to measure them, or are they pretty much already set?
Basically, I would say measure everything. Always want to double check and make sure your clearances are correct, you know? Big thing, this is a cast piston, this is a forged piston. Forged piston expands faster than a cast piston. Tolerances are very, very critical on a forged piston. Too loose, it's going to rattle, it's going to sound like shit. Too tight, it's going to seize. So that's a difference. This is actually a 95-inch piston. That's a 113. I mean, that's already a big bore piston.
What's the difference between front and back? Why do they?
It's actually the reliefs in the piston themselves for clearance.
Yeah, with such big valves in the high lift cam and stuff.
Yeah, but I was asking about one piston goes in the front.
Yep, just because it's every piston is directional for the most part. So and the way they set it up, these actually have the top of the piston. You can see it is actually shaped like a combustion chamber.
Oh, okay.
So if you have them swap, you're going to be hitting not only the combustion chamber but the valves and everything. There's going to be contact there. So
Okay.
In case you have a bad day, that's why you turn it over my hand.
yeah, it's maybe keep careful. I mean, people forget. Even when stuff's labeled, it's easy to swap. I mean, that's, like Bill was saying, we're actually one of the jobs on my lift right now, the guy did the job himself and came in to have us tune it and do a few other things and just wouldn't start. He said he got it started, but he had to crack it to half throttle. He got the Perfect Fit push rods, which are labeled intake and exhaust, and they, in the instruction sheet, it tells you which way they go in the bike. There's a tapered edge that's got to go down into the tappet. He had them upside down and had both intake push rods in the rear cylinder and both exhaust push rods in the front cylinder. And
Didn't work too well.
no, it wasn't firing on the front cylinder. It just kept popping out the intakes up because the longer exhaust push rod was just keeping the intake valve open. So this is the way they go in. These are the Perfect Fit push rods. They're lighter than your adjustables. They're stronger than your stocks. So, and this goes right in the tappet, straight from the rockers. And they label them for ease of use. Make sure you read them. He got lucky that nothing, came in contact. So, what'd you forget?
Base gasket.
So that was about the only thing that he forgot, huh?
That was
One of the.
that was one of the few things. This cam spacing was off. What else? A few other things. I went and I redid the oil pump alignment, just make sure that was right, because a few other things like that. Cam spacing was off. The wall's Loctite on the cam hardware. Not a huge deal, but
Not going to become a Harley mechanic anytime soon, huh?
yeah, that's one of those
Wouldn't be
things.
surprised, now that he knows, he'll remember all the
Yeah,
good
yeah.
things, these little
You won't
things,
do
yeah?
that. You won't do that stuff again.
It's
will you?
perfection,
There's a little vindication. It's like, hey, why don't you, can I take care of it for you? And then it's like, no, I'll do it myself. All right. Now we're gonna redo it for you. So.
Oh.
But it's gonna be running great now. I've fired up and everything. So. Problems?
Yeah. What not to do.
I mean, obviously, it's better to go with the Perfect Fit push rods, but if you're just doing the top end and the adjustables,
Yep.
you find those are issues, or?
The only thing with adjustables is you really gotta lock that lock nut down. A lot of wrenches will actually, when you're trying to torque them down, will actually open up and won't let you get the proper torque on there. And if one of those push rods collapses, when you're riding down the road, you're stuck, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's one of those things, it's a matter of preference. I don't really like them. I like the Perfect Fits, just because it's less work,
Right.
you know? The adjustables, everyone thinks there's less work because you don't need to take the rockers off and stuff. You can just throw them right in that way, but, you know, it's a pain in the ass to have to adjust the push rods out and really ensure that, you know, you're getting it locked down as best, you know, that you can.